moonlight rendezvous. Scarlett tucked a strand of her long chestnut hair behind her ear as she gazed out the car window, watching the lush forests of rural Oregon speed by in a blur of emerald green. The winding road carried them farther away from Portland with each passing mile, bringing them closer to their destination, the tiny coastal town of Astoria, where Scarlett and her best friend Jade would be spending their week-long post-graduation trip. This was their final adventure together before they parted ways for college in the fall, and Scarlett wanted to savor every moment. Beside her, Jade fiddled with the radio dial, settling on a pop station that crackled due to their distance from the city. She bobbed her head along to the beat, her short blonde curls bouncing around her cherubic face. Though they were opposites in many ways, with Scarlett's willowy figure and moody temperament contrasting sharply against Jade's curvy build and cheerful disposition, their sisterly bond was unbreakable after 16 years of friendship. "Thanks again for convincing your parents to let us do this trip," said Jade, flashing Scarlett a grateful smile. "Anything to get out of the city for a while," Scarlett replied, inhaling the scent of pine and salt water drifting in through the open windows. This summer held so many bittersweet lasts. Last trip with Jade, last family vacation, last days of childhood freedom before the responsibilities of college life began. She intended to soak up every second. Jade's smile faded, her hazel eyes clouding with concern. "Are you sure you're okay coming back here?" she asked gently. "I know Astoria holds a lot of memories for you." Scarlett tensed, gripping the worn armrest of the passenger seat. It had been 3 years since her last trip to Astoria with her family, the summer before her mother passed away. Though the grief had lessened from the sharpest sting to a dull ache, returning to the seaside town would still bring an onslaught of memories, both beautiful and painful. "I'll be all right," Scarlett assured her friend. "It'll be nice to make some new memories here before we go our separate ways." Jade nodded, satisfied with her answer. "Well then, we'd better start with the adventure I've got planned for tonight?" Scarlett shot her a quizzical look. "What adventure?" "It's a surprise," Jade said with an impish wink, "but it involves moonlight, mystery, and 2 very cute boys to serve as our guides." Scarlett groaned. Trust Jade to plan some wild rendezvous with strangers during their very first night in town. Though reluctant, she knew resisting her friend's enthusiastic schemes was futile. She just prayed this one wouldn't land them in any real trouble. The sun slipped below the horizon as they crossed the Youngs Bay Bridge into Astoria, the quaint houses and shops glimmering in the twilight. Scarlett took a deep breath, bracing herself for the nostalgia she knew awaited. Scarlett stepped out of the car, tilting her face up to admire the fading rosiness of the sky. The salty breeze tousled her hair, lending a healthy glow to her olive skin. She closed her eyes, inhaling the comforting scent. Though the town had visibly changed in 3 years, the sights, sounds, and smells overwhelmed her with nostalgia. Jade came around the car to stand beside her, linking her arm through Scarlett's. "Take all the time you need," she said. "I know coming back wasn't easy for you." Scarlett offered her a small, grateful smile. Trust Jade to understand exactly what she needed in this moment without any further explanation required. After another deep breath, Scarlett turned to grab their bags from the trunk, while Jade headed up the walkway to unlock the beach cottage they'd rented for the week. The quaint craftsman home looked charming with its light blue siding and whitewashed front porch. Scarlett could already imagine evenings spent out there snuggled in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate and watching the tides roll in. She hauled their luggage through the front door, letting it drop heavily onto the dark hardwood floor. Jade stood at the large bay window overlooking the shoreline. The last fiery glow of sunset silhouetted her figure as Scarlett joined her. "Gorgeous view, isn't it?" said Jade. Scarlett nodded, taking in the sweeping expanse of grayish-blue water meeting the strip of golden sand along the beach. The familiar sight eased the tightness in her chest she hadn't even realized was there. As she drank it in, she knew coming back had been the right decision. This place held comfort along with the heartache. Jade playfully nudged her shoulder. "I don't know about you, but I'm starving," she said with a grin. "Let's get changed and head into town for a bite." After the long drive, food sounded perfect. Scarlett quickly swapped her travel clothes for dark-wash skinny jeans, paired with ankle boots and a maroon sweater that complemented her olive complexion. She swiped on some mascara and lip gloss, then met Jade by the front door. Jade had chosen light denim shorts and a pink off-the-shoulder top that showed off her curves. Her golden curls bounced against her shoulders as she grabbed the rental cottage keys. "Ready for our first Astoria adventure?" she asked, eyes twinkling. Scarlett linked arms with her again, feeling lighter than she had all day. "Lead the way." They emerged into the velvety blue of dusk, the air tinged with brininess. Fairy lights adorned the nearby shops, creating a romantic glow. Jade chattered brightly about her classes next semester as they headed toward a fish and chips place she'd researched online. Scarlett half listened, occasionally adding a comment or nodding in agreement. They joined the short queue at the counter, perusing the menu boards mounted overhead. The place was charmingly retro, with seafoam green booths and nautical accents. Hints of garlic, fried batter, and malt vinegar filled the air, awakening Scarlett's appetite. They placed their orders, then slid into a vinyl booth by the front windows to await their baskets of piping hot fried seafood. Dusk had shifted into twilight by now, the inky night sky dotted with stars. Scarlett found herself anxiously checking her phone, knowing they didn't have much time before Jade's mysterious adventure would commence. As if reading her mind, Jade leaned forward, eyes flashing conspiratorially. "So, are you ready to hear about our moonlight rendezvous tonight?" Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "I guess that depends on what you've gotten us into." Jade laughed. "Don't worry, it's nothing illegal," she said with a wink. "My friend Jamie is spending the summer here visiting his grandparents. We met up earlier and he mentioned an awesome local legend I thought you'd be into." Scarlett felt her curiosity piqued in spite of herself. Jade knew her love of mythology and spooky stories. "Okay, go on." "There's an old mansion on the outskirts of town," Jade explained, her voice hushed. "Rumor has it the original owner built secret catacombs beneath it back in the 1800s. Jamie said he and his friend Marco explored the woods out there once and found a weird stone tunnel leading underground." Scarlett shivered, intrigued. She'd always felt drawn to the supernatural and paranormal, passionate about horror movies and ghost stories since childhood. This hidden passageway beneath a decrepit Victorian mansion sounded right up her alley. "Jamie and Marco are going to meet up with us tonight and help us find it," Jade continued, eyes bright with exhilaration. "Doesn't that sound like an adventure?" Scarlett nodded slowly, chewing her lip. "It does sound cool, but 4 teenagers snooping around private property at night? That could get messy if we're caught." Jade waved a dismissive hand. "We'll be careful," she said. "Jamie promised the cops hardly ever patrol out there. Don't be such a worrywart." Before Scarlett could reply, the server arrived with piping hot baskets of fried cod and fries. The mouth-watering scent diluted her concerns, especially once she took the first crispy, flaky bite. Jade flashed her a triumphant grin across the booth. "Just wait until you meet Jamie and Marco," she said between bites of fries. "They're both totally gorgeous, and Marco couldn't stop asking questions about you after I showed him your Instagram." Scarlett nearly choked on a fry. "You showed him my Instagram, Jade?" "Oh, relax," she laughed. "I was talking you up the whole time. The boys are excited to take us on this adventure tonight." Scarlett knew further arguing was pointless once Jade got an idea in her head. With a resigned sigh, she stole a fry off her friend's plate. Okay, but we stay together no matter what, got it? No sneaking off into dark corners with these mystery boys." "Deal," said Jade, offering her pinky to twist around Scarlett's in an unbreakable vow. Scarlett rolled her eyes but obliged. She had a feeling it was going to be an interesting night. Nervous anticipation simmered in Scarlett's stomach as she and Jade waited outside the darkened movie theater per Jade's instructions. Crickets chirped in the surrounding woodland area, a cool breeze rustling the trees. Scarlett zipped her jacket up further against the chill. At the rumble of an approaching engine, Jade perked up. Moments later, a shiny black pickup truck rolled into the parking lot. It parked in front of the girls, and Jade let out an excited squeal. "That's them!" she said, giving a little wave. Scarlett pressed her lips together anxiously as two boys emerged from the truck. Jamie had tousled brown hair and an athletic build showcased by his football hoodie. When he smiled, dimples creased his tanned cheeks. Marco was lankier, with inky black hair that curled over his forehead. His olive skin seemed to glow in the moonlight. Both were objectively good-looking, though Scarlett felt hesitant to pass judgment just yet. Jamie greeted Jade with a quick hug while Marco offered Scarlett a shy smile. His dark brown eyes glimmered as they flickered over her face before dropping away. "Scar, meet Jamie and Marco," said Jade brightly. "Boys, this is my best friend Scarlett." "Heya," said Jamie amiably. "Nice to meet you," Marco added softly. Scarlett smiled back politely. "Likewise." "Well, we ready to do this?" Jamie said, rubbing his hands together eagerly. Without waiting for a response, he opened the truck's back door with a gallant sweep of his arm. "Ladies first!" Jade scrambled in, patting the seat for Scarlett to join. Scarlett eyed the darkened forest beyond the parking lot apprehensively. Her nerves must have shown on her face because Marco touched her arm lightly. "Don't worry, we won't let anything happen to you guys," he said. The sincerity in his dark gaze was reassuring. Scarlett managed a small smile of gratitude before climbing into the truck. Jamie cranked up an upbeat radio station as they bumped down a gravel access road into dense woodland. Jade peppered him with bubbly questions, but Scarlett stayed silent, watching the shadows play over Marco's face in the passing headlights. His sharp jawline and raven hair gave him an almost vampiric beauty. When he caught her staring, Scarlett quickly turned toward the window. After 15 bumpy minutes, Jamie pulled off the road. Only a faint glow filtered through the trees from distant streetlights. Scarlett shivered as she climbed out behind Jade. The boys grabbed flashlights and sweatshirts for them from the truck bed. She slipped on the oversized hoodie, comforted by its warmth. Marco's woodsy cologne clung to the soft fleece. "This way," Jamie directed, sweeping his flashlight beam over a narrow trail. They fell in step behind him, crunching through the carpet of dead leaves. Marco walked beside Scarlett, hands tucked into the pockets of his leather jacket. "So you and Jade have been friends a long time?" he asked. Scarlett nodded as she gave him a cursory glance. "Since kindergarten, we're more like sisters." "That's sweet," said Marco. "You seem close." "We are," said Scarlett, eyeing him guardedly. His interest seemed genuine, but she remained wary. Handsome boys often approached her primarily because of her looks rather than who she was inside. Marco seemed different, with his shy smiles and thoughtful questions, but it was too soon to tell. They reached a crumbling stone wall blanketed in ivy. Jamie swept aside the curtain of vines, revealing an arched opening. Scarlett glimpsed worn steps descending into darkness. She swallowed hard. The reality of entering some secret crypt hidden beneath a decrepit mansion finally crystallized, sending her pulse skittering. But Marco's hand found the small of her back, guiding her forward. "I'll go first," he offered gently, "but stay close behind me." Jade eagerly hurried after Jamie, who had already disappeared into the void. Scarlett fumbled for Marco's hand, gripping it like a lifeline. His fingers laced through hers, calloused but warm. She clung to him as they descended into the bowels of the earth, darkness swallowing them whole. The flashlight beams danced erratically over the crumbling stone walls as the group descended the weathered steps. Scarlett's apprehension grew with each step, her hand still trembling in Marco's steady grasp. She knew he could feel her shaking, but he said nothing, merely lacing his fingers more tightly through hers. His solid presence so close helped steady her nerves. Jade and Jamie up ahead whispered excitedly as the passageway leveled out, their voices echoing eerily against the stone. The air grew colder, laced with damp earthiness. Scarlett shivered, moving closer to Marco. "Creepy, huh?" he murmured, lips close to her ear. She nodded, peering cautiously around. "Like something out of a horror movie. Part of me still thinks this is a terrible idea." He chuckled softly. "Don't worry, we're safe, I promise." His assurance sent a tingle up her spine. Whether from confidence in his word or his nearness, Scarlett couldn't be sure. They wandered through maze-like tunnels that seemed to stretch endlessly into the dark. Strange symbols marked the walls, fueling Scarlett's theory that some secret society or cult had built this place. She traced her fingers along the rough stone, mind racing to interpret the obscure carvings. "Can you read any of this?" Marco asked curiously. Scarlett frowned at the unfamiliar shapes. "I'm not sure," she mused. "It looks pagan, maybe, or an ancient language." Their history enthralled her as much as the creepiness. This had been someone's hidden sanctuary once, full of purpose and secrets. What happened to them? Would they have approved of 4 teenagers infiltrating their buried empire centuries later? A muffled squeal up ahead made Marco and Scarlett rush forward. Their flashlight beams landed on a wide chamber with vaulted ceilings supported by crumbling columns. Jade pointed to the far wall with a trembling hand. Human skulls gazed back at them from rows of gaping niches, hollow eyes somehow mournful. "Oh God," Scarlett breathed. She felt Marco's arm slide around her, pulling her back against his firm chest. His touch calmed her racing heart. Jamie let out an uneasy chuckle, but Jade looked enthralled as she drifted toward the macabre display. "Jade, I don't think you should get too close," Scarlett warned. Jade only shrugged, transfixed by the skulls. "It's not like they can hurt me," she argued. Still, Scarlett noticed her friend kept one cautious hand braced on the wall as she examined them. As unsettled as Scarlett felt, she understood Jade's fascination. There was something mesmerizingly eerie about it all. The heavy scrape of shifting stone made them all freeze. Scarlett's eyes darted around the shadowy chamber, heart lurching. Had one of the old walls finally collapsed under the strain of centuries? But the sound came again from the back of the room, followed by a low creak. A sliver of light appeared, then widened as a hidden door swung outward. Two figures emerged, the flashlights gleaming off pale skin and sharp incisors as they flashed unnaturally wide smiles. Scarlett gasped, stumbling back against Marco's steadying hands on her shoulders. Her mind reeled in disbelief even as her instincts screamed to run, because the beautiful, terrifying creatures that had just emerged from the hidden doorway had the appearance of humans. But they clearly were not. Their slender bodies moved with predatory grace, blood-red irises glinting as they took in the scene. Thick corded veins spidered just beneath their chalky skin. One had waist-length silvery hair that swayed hypnotically as she tilted her head, assessing the newcomers with curiosity. The other had a muscular build and short raven-colored hair, his full lips pulled back to reveal deadly fangs as his gaze settled on Scarlett's throat. "Well, well," the female purred in a sultry voice. "It seems we have guests." Her tongue flicked over her crimson lips hungrily. Scarlett's mind raced, pulse thundering. Every horror movie she had ever seen confirmed her terrible suspicion. These were real, living vampires. Jamie and Jade seemed similarly paralyzed by shock and terror. But oddly, Marco stepped forward calmly, unfazed by the nightmarish creatures before them. "We don't mean to intrude," he said evenly. "We were just exploring the tunnels. We'll leave you in peace." Scarlett stared at him. How could he be so unafraid? So polite even. Then with dawning horror she noticed the inky veins threading beneath his olive skin, the hungry gleam in his dark eyes as they roamed over her throat. No, it couldn't be. But the truth stared her in the face, impossible to deny. Marco was one of them, as were Jamie, Jade, and now herself. Scarlett's breath came in ragged gasps as she struggled to digest this nightmare revelation. She took in Jade's glowing ruby eyes and the elegant fangs peeking from her parted lips, saw the truth mirrored in Jamie's savage, hungry expression. Somehow these monsters had deceived them, lured them here as prey. But how could she not have known her best friend was one of them? Marco touched her shoulder, his voice low and soothing despite the predator's gaze that raked over her hungrily. "I know you're afraid, but try to stay calm. We only want to help you." Scarlett wrenched away from him. "Stay back!" she cried through tears of panic. "How could you bring us here, trick us like this?" His eyes softened. It's complicated, but you have a choice to make now." He lifted his wrist to his mouth and sank his fangs into the pale skin. Dark blood, thick and fragrant, welled up. Despite her terror, Scarlett's gaze fixated on the crimson beads. Venom pooled in her mouth as an all-consuming thirst blazed through her veins like fire. Jade pressed close to Jamie, nuzzling his offered wrist with shuddering delight. A heady power seemed to thrum through her as the blood hit her tongue, rich and intoxicating. Scarlett trembled with the effort of resisting that siren call, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this?" she choked out. Marco's gaze held hers, full of empathy. "This life chose you as it did all of us," he said gently. "I know the choice seems cruel, but immortality has its gifts." He moved closer, tentatively reaching to brush her hair back from her tear-streaked face. Scarlett froze at the silken brush of his fingers along her cheek. Despite everything, she felt a connection to him on some deeper, primal level. "It doesn't have to be so frightening," he murmured. "Let me show you." His tantalizing scent enveloped her, cutting through her panic. She knew one taste of his blood would awaken something dangerous and hypnotic inside her, but as she gazed into Marco's dark eyes, she felt her resistance faltering. Maybe, just maybe, she could survive this nightmare and discover the gifts he spoke of, with Marco by her side. Heart pounding, Scarlett slowly brought his wrist to her lips. As her fangs broke his skin and the rich blood filled her mouth, her fate was sealed. She was forever changed into one of the night creatures she had once only dreamed of. But she would face eternity with Marco, and that made the shadows seem less dark. Scarlett's head spun as Marco's ancient blood coursed through her veins, awakening her dormant vampire instincts with undeniable force. Her vision sharpened, details crystallizing in the darkness, the crumbling stone walls, the gleam of fangs and hungry smiles, Marco's patient expression as he watched her transformation unfold. Power thrummed through Scarlett's limbs, lightning quick and deadly. She could hear Dreamy and Jade's footsteps echoing down the tunnels, likely seeking out any other humans to turn. Revulsion warred with her new urges. She did not want to become a monster like the creatures that had deceived her. "What happens now?" she asked Marco, despising the tremor in her voice. His thumb gently brushed the blood from her lower lip. "You'll come back with us. We'll teach you our ways, help you transition." Scarlett scowled, twisting away. "And if I refuse?" "Nowhere to run that we won't find you," he replied calmly. "This is your home now." She shuddered, rage and helplessness choking her. Marco reached for her, but she recoiled from his touch. "Don't," she hissed. "I trusted you. Now I'm damned for eternity because of your lies." His eyes softened. "I know you're afraid, but try to understand. The thirst controls us. We need blood to survive." His gaze held hers intently. "You'll learn to adapt, as we all have." Scarlett's fists clenched. She had no intention of adapting to become a merciless killer. As soon as an opportunity to escape presented itself, she would take it, no matter what the cost. For now she had no choice but to feign cooperation. Marco gently led her through the twisting tunnels back into the mansion's shadowy depths, but Scarlett's mind turned over plans of rebellion. She would find a way to break his hold over her, and if she could, she would make all of them pay for what they had done to her and Jade. Even if it destroyed her, she would have her vengeance. Marco and his brood may have won this round, but she was determined it would be their last. Scarlett forced herself to remain calm as Marco led her through the decaying mansion. Her razor-sharp senses took in every detail, the sagging floors, crumbling walls, and gauzy cobwebs veiling antique furniture. This once opulent home had become a Gothic tomb for its immortal inhabitants. She shuddered as they descended creaking stairs to the cellar. Heavy caskets with soil-filled crates were stacked along the rough brick walls. Marco caught her uneasy glance. "We take rest here during daylight," he explained. The soil offers protection." Scarlett swallowed hard but said nothing. The reality of her fate sunk in further with each revelation. Daylight would now become her enemy too. Marco led her through another arched doorway into a vast cavernous chamber. Here the rest of the brood had gathered, sprawled on sumptuous velvet divans like languid lions. Scarlett counted 13 in all, chatting and laughing with casual cruelty. Jade perched happily beside Dreamy, giggling as he whispered in her ear. Their eyes shone feverish red, drunk on fresh blood. Scarlett's stomach twisted with disgust. A regal blonde woman Scarlett assumed was the leader rose to greet them. Her crimson gown rustled as she approached, inspecting Scarlett with a smile. "Welcome, little one," she purred, tracing a cold finger down Scarlett's throat. Scarlett forced herself not to flinch. This must be the female from the tomb. "I am Lysandra," the woman continued, "mistress of this coven. Marco chose well. You'll make a fine addition once properly trained." Scarlett remained silent, plotting. She could not let them brainwash her into becoming a merciless predator, but she must make them believe she accepted her new station, at least for now. Marco kept one protective hand on the small of her back. "The transformation took hold quickly," he told Lysandra with pride. "Scarlett will be quite powerful, I predict." Good, Lysandra murmured. "Now leave her to rest. She has much to adjust to." With a respectful nod, Marco departed. Scarlett felt vulnerably alone as Lysandra's ancient gaze assessed her. She had to play this carefully. Her life depended on it. "I will show you to your quarters," Lysandra said. "We will begin your training tomorrow night." Scarlett followed, palms slick. She could not let them mold her into a monster. She had to escape this nightmare. If she failed, damnation awaited. Jade sighed happily as Jamie nuzzled her throat, sharp fangs grazing her skin teasingly. His kiss seared her vein as his body pressed her into the velvet cushions. "My beautiful monster," he purred, laving the faint bite marks with his tongue. Jade delighted in this newfound power thrumming through her veins. She felt sexy and dangerous in Jamie's arms, intoxicated by his attentions. Gone was her human frailty. Now she could spend eternity enjoying primal pleasures rather than growing old. "I'm so glad we're together," she breathed as Jamie trailed eager kisses down her chest. She thrilled at how easily she could destroy him, but he had awoken something dark and delightful in her. Their shared blood bond could not be broken. In another shadowy chamber, Scarlett sat stiffly as Marco gently brushed her hair. She remained wary, but his tenderness slowly began thawing her icy resolve. "You don't need to fear me," he murmured. "We could be so happy if you let yourself embrace this life." His lips grazed the nape of her neck, sending an involuntary shiver through her. She silently cursed her body's instinctive response to his touch. "The past is done," Marco whispered. "Think of the future we could share. Eternity lying in each other's arms." As he turned her chin towards him, Scarlett searched desperately for any remnant of the gentle human boy she had trusted. But as Marco's mouth captured hers in a searing kiss, she felt her walls slowly crumbling. Perhaps she could be happy here after all, if she allowed it. But just as hope bloomed tentatively in Scarlett's heart, Lysandra burst into the chamber, eyes aflame. "The coven is under attack," she hissed. "Hunters have found us." Scarlett's pulse raced. Here was the opportunity she needed. As Marco rushed to defend his brood against the mortal invaders, Scarlett slipped silently upstairs. Chaos consumed the mansion. She easily evaded detection. Within minutes, she had broken out into the cool night air, fleeing for the protective embrace of the woods. Her immortal life had only just begun, but she would rather take her chances alone than remain a prisoner. As Scarlett disappeared into the shadows, the threads of her human life unraveled completely. But she turned her face bravely toward the future. Come what may, she was free. While Scarlett made her escape, Jade remained willingly enraptured by Jamie and the hedonistic coven. She felt no desire to return to a mundane human existence. Thrilled in the savage bloodlust coursing through her veins, she would never age or fear death again. Jamie had unlocked her most primal instincts. She would gladly prowl the night by his side, taking victims to feed their shared appetites. Caught in the frenzied chaos of the hunter attack, Jade and Jamie shared one final passionate embrace. Her hunger rose to a fever pitch from the scent of fresh blood. "Stay with me," Jamie pleaded, but his face was already distorting, flesh withering to bone before her eyes. Jade screamed as he dissolved to ash, their eternal bond shattered by the hunter's blades. Blinded by rage and grief, Jade vowed merciless revenge upon the foolish mortals who dared attack her kind. She would make them pay dearly, so be warned. Should a seductive vampire cast their gaze your way, turn and flee. Their embrace only leads to unquenchable thirst and eternal damnation. Resist their hypnotic thrall or suffer the fate that befell poor Jade and her tragic lover Jamie, two monsters made for each other. Some passions should never be indulged. Please like, share, and subscribe for more creepy tales from the netherworld. Thanks for your support. Until next time, sweet dreams.